The rolling hillsides and woodlands of mid-Wales are the setting for a regular invasion of migrant birds which winter in Africa but return here each spring to breed. One such bird is the pied flycatcher. During the breeding season, the males develop bold black and white plumage. They spend most of the day singing to attract the attention of any nearby female. But once he has secured a mate, the male pied flycatcher often goes on to look for a second female and fools her into thinking he is still single. Such deliberate trickery has earned this deceptive bird a reputation. It's mid-April, and the Welsh woodlands have yet to burst into life. Many male pied flycatchers have already arrived. They overwintered in Africa. Exactly where is not known. The males have already established a territory by the time the females arrive a week or so later. Their coloration is much less conspicuous. Pied flycatchers normally nest in old woodpecker or nuthatch holes in trees, but Peter Jennings, who has been studying this species for many years, has increased the number of nest sites in this particular piece of oak woodland by erecting a large number of nest boxes, which he checks each spring as the birds arrive. Many were used the previous year, and some have been occupied during the winter as roosts for local bird species. The nest boxes are each numbered and placed at eye level for the convenience of the scientist. Pied flycatchers will nest anywhere between root level and 25 meters from the ground. The first males to arrive have the pick of the nest boxes and quickly establish a small territory around the site. The nearer the box, the more frequently the birds sing. A female lands in his territory. The male wastes no time in extolling the virtues of his particular nest box. When she flies in for a closer look, the male hops inside and continues singing. He tries to entice her inside, but it's still early in the season and she doesn't seem eager to commit herself. A second female lands nearby and shows some interest. The original female sees her off. This time the male succeeds in luring the female inside, and she seems to accept the male and his nest box. An insect offered to her through the hole strengthens the bond, and now it's certain that this is where she will raise her brood. It's a hazardous time for the male pied flycatchers. Many fall victim to birds of prey such as the sparrowhawk. The males, with their bright plumage and constant singing, go out of their way to be as conspicuous as possible. But there's no shortage of males, and those that get eaten are often the young, inexperienced ones. This weeding out can only benefit the population of pied flycatchers. The remaining males are fitter and more capable of survival, and may pass on these properties to their offspring through their one sometimes two, females. The females are now busy collecting fresh nesting material. Strips or bast from honeysuckle stems are favoured to form the base of the nest. The leaves of oak, birch and alder, and even birch bark are also used. The nest is usually lined with fine dead grass stems, or better still, horsehair. Sheep's wool, though readily available in this part of Wales, is only rarely incorporated, and feathers are never used. The nest is built up to within a few centimetres of the hole, and the female nestles down in the newly formed cup. Around the woodland, many other birds are already well into their nesting season. These ravens built their nest in the bare branches many weeks ago. The fledglings are almost ready to leave the nest now, just as the pied flycatchers begin to arrive. Their nest complete, the male visits his mate regularly with food in the form of spiders and small insects. It's now early May, and the first eggs will be laid in a day or two. One egg is laid each day, usually in the morning. Only when the last egg has been laid will the females start to incubate, so ensuring that all hatch at about the same time. 6 or 7 is a normal clutch. Only the female incubates the eggs, usually for periods of about a quarter of an hour or so at a time. She's only off the nest for a few minutes. The choice of a nest site is very important. Pied flycatchers favour a mixture of oak and alder woodland. In the spring, as the birds arrive, the alder provides them with a rich source of small insects which emerge early in the year. Once the chicks have hatched, the demand for food increases, and the oak woodlands provide countless caterpillars. It seems that the only limiting factor on the number of flycatchers in Wales is the quantity of available nest sites. In this case, it's a natural one, in an old nuthatch hole, easily identified by the amount of mud around the entrance. When the flycatcher study started in 1983, this particular area contained only 3 nesting pairs. In 1984, over 100 nest boxes were positioned round the farm and its oak and alder woods. In 1985, 66 were used by the flycatchers, so the area must have contained a large population of birds that weren't actually breeding. There's certainly enough food to maintain thousands of birds. While the birds are still incubating eggs, Peter takes the opportunity to check on the boxes. The female is sitting in this one, so a careful approach is necessary, although pied flycatchers desert only rarely. A handkerchief plugs the hole and the bird is carefully removed. She's quite young, probably one of last year's hatchlings. She's gently posted back into the box and the handkerchief replaced while her statistics are recorded. A dipper searches for food along the riverbed, a common sight in this part of Wales. Mayfly, stonefly and caddisfly larvae are teased out from the pebbles. In deeper water, the dipper will dive and actually walk along the riverbed using its wings as paddles. It's a juvenile bird, only just fledged. Although it's capable of looking after itself, it still continues to beg food from one of its parents, which by now is in full molt and appears totally disinterested. It's now 2 weeks since the pied flycatcher laid her last egg, and her clutch in nest box 12 has now hatched. Both male and female birds bring food to the 2 day-old chicks. The young are very susceptible to the cold, and temperatures of less than 12 degrees centigrade for several days cause many deaths. Between feeds, the female broods her young until they're about 7 days old. By then, they're producing enough of their own body heat. As well as flies, spiders and beetles, the young are brought large numbers of small green caterpillars that feed on the yolks. Tannins, produced by the yolk as a defense against defoliating insects, build up in the caterpillars throughout the season. Large amounts of tannins could prove fatal to the chicks, so the timing of the pied flycatcher's breeding cycle is critical. Too early in the year and there won't be enough food available. Too late, and the abundant food source may poison the offspring. The chicks are fed and brooded several times an hour. As the chicks grow, so does their demand for food, and feeding rates increase. After about a week, they level out to about 5 or 6 feeds per chick every hour. That's a lot of insects, and both parents are kept very busy. But the female here in nest box 12 is in fact the male's second mate. 100 meters across the oak woods, the male has another female with chicks, the result of an earlier mating. Once his first mate was sitting on eggs and firmly committed to the nest, the male flycatcher wandered off to follow his bigamous nature. Very occasionally, a male may even have a third family. His original batch of offspring is now 12 days old, and already they weigh as much as their parents. The male arrives with yet another large green caterpillar. Only 4 more to go. The pied flycatchers aren't the only birds to make use of this seemingly inexhaustible food source and Peter Jennings' nest boxes. Blue tits and great tits begin nesting before the pied flycatchers arrive and are major competitors for nest boxes. It's possible that a pair of blue tits may be evicted by a newly arrived flycatcher, but great tits are less inclined to leave. Great tits often win a fight over a nest hole and may even kill a flycatcher if it gets cornered in the box. Box number 38 is home to a pair of redstarts. The brightly colored male is busy carrying out his share of the feeding of the chicks. Like the pied flycatcher, the redstart is a trans-Saharan migrant and arrives in Wales at more or less the same time in the spring. It's not a very strong competitor for the nest boxes and often uses larger holes in trees. This box, right on the boundary of the woodland, is a typical choice of nest site. In the undergrowth below the redstart's box is a wood warbler's nest. It too feeds its offspring largely on the green caterpillars from the oak trees. But there's plenty to go round, and the wood warbler can't be regarded in any way as a competitor in the Welsh woodland. The male pied flycatcher has returned to his second family in nest box 12. They are now 7 days old and need to be fed more and more frequently. But at least they're producing their own body heat, so there's no further need for the female to brood them during the day or even at night. This allows her more time to search for caterpillars and takes a little of the pressure off her mate. But just as life was getting a little easier for him, the male pied flycatcher is confronted by another, much bigger problem. This young tawny owl hatched before the flycatchers arrived. It's now 6 weeks old, and its presence within the pied flycatcher's territory is a cause for concern. Although tawny owls feed mainly on voles and mice, an adult won't hesitate to offer its chick young flycatchers if mammals are in short supply. Both the male and female bird will mob the owl chick in order to persuade it to move on. The owlet responds by squinting, and apparently to the flycatcher becomes less conspicuous. Its large eyes seem to be what trigger the flycatcher. This ploy seems to work, and the young owl is left in peace. The flycatcher's brood in number 75 is now fully fledged and ready to leave the safety of their wooden home. They're now 17 days old, but once they leave the nest, they'll still be dependent on their parents, mainly their mother, for another 8 to 10 days. By now, the bigamous male is beginning to look rather tatty. Food is brought less frequently. The only thing that will persuade the fledglings to leave the box is hunger. The adults tempt the chicks out with beaks full of insects. One chick has already left the nest. It's perched high up in the tree canopy, where it will be joined by its siblings within a few hours. For the next few days, they're very vulnerable and are easy meat for jays and birds of prey. They spend a lot of time hidden along the dense hedgerows. It's now late July, and the young are completely independent. They've spent the last few weeks feeding and fattening up. It's now that they begin to congregate in small groups, ready for their long journey. From here, they'll head off southwards. In August, they arrive in northern Portugal. The birds spend their time here among the vineyards and cork oaks. They may even establish small territories. At this time of the year, the male and female are difficult to tell apart. After a week or two, they'll have put on enough fat to take them non-stop to their wintering quarters, thought to be located in Central Africa. They'll not make such a deliberate stopover on their way back next year, but will fly directly northwards, following the spring, until they arrive back in the oak woodlands of Wales. As a species, the pied flycatcher leads a dual life, spending the winter in Africa and the spring and summer in the Welsh woodlands. As individuals, many male pied flycatchers also lead dual lives, secretly acquiring a second mate, and so living up to the name of the bigamy bird.
This ancient and beautiful manor house dates back over 700 years to the days of Magna Carta. There could hardly be a more peaceful place in all England than its lovely gardens. But for the birds and other animals that live here, that peace is an illusion. For them, danger, starvation, injury are routine, and violence is a daily event. Each day is a struggle for survival. This is Cranbourne Manor in Dorset, well known for its magnificent gardens. It's less well known for its robins, but robins are the reason why zoologist David Harper finds himself in the gardens this fine late summer morning. In Britain, and in Britain only, gardens are the place for robins. They're the present-day equivalent of the woodland clearings that robins used to haunt when Britain was covered by forest, and they were shy woodland birds. The 20th century robin, as David knows, is full of surprises.
I've only just started to look at these robins here at Cranbourne, but if their lives are anything like those of robins I've looked at elsewhere, then their lives are going to contain more sex and violence than would be allowed on any ordinary television soap opera.
August is the quietest time in the soap opera. The adult robins are seldom seen. They've just come to the end of the breeding season, and now they're moulting, skulking in the bushes until their new plumage has grown. So it's a good time to get to know the different characters in the plot. To carry out his scientific studies, David needs to be sure which bird he's watching, even at a distance. A particular combination of colour rings identifies each individual. A red ring on the right leg marks the first robin, red right. He's a survivor, the youngster who escaped the claws of the kestrel, so he's more usually known as JR. JR has struck up a relationship with John the gardener. The worms, beetles and large invertebrates his spade exposes are a robin's principal food. The human year is coming to an end. For the robins, this is a time of crisis. Males, and many females too, are returning to the territories they first claimed soon after fledging. They'll spend the winter here and probably breed here too. Intruders, also seeking a territory, are briskly driven out. Although JR is only in his first year, he's successfully claimed a patch round one of the beech trees. His songpost commands a view over the big shed where firewood is stored for the house. JR has discovered that Jim and Robin, the other gardeners, not only provide worms and beetles, but crumbs from their sandwiches. Today, another robin comes to the shed. It's a female, but as often happens during the winter, JR doesn't realize this. He regards the new female as an intruding male who's trying to take over his territory. She makes friendly advances, but he displays aggressively and finally drives her from the woodshed. The first snows of winter are cold and cruel. Robins find their food on the ground, and at this time of the year that often means just a few insects in the shelter of a bush or the odd spider. But snow seals off even these meagre supplies. David keeps track of the casualties.
On every visit to the garden, I try to plot the position of each bird that I see on a map. And after a few visits, you begin to learn where each of the territories are. And this means it's easy to go round on a winter's day and see whether or not any of the robins have vanished.
These observations make it very clear how important it is for a robin to have a territory. In severe weather, the weights of territory-holding robins actually increase. The floaters, robins who fail to get a territory, lose weight rapidly, even though they spend more time foraging. During an average winter, a third of the Cranbourne robins will die of hunger. The snow is certainly deep and crisp and even, but happily there is an open and hospitable door at the garden centre. Late January, and David starts to notice new robins coming into the gardens. Many of the 30 or more robins that spend the winter here are males. But where do the females spend the winter? As yet, we don't know. From early January onwards, they start returning to the gardens in ones and twos, searching for unpaired males to mate with. But there are never enough females to go round, and in any year, 1 in every 5 males fails to obtain a mate. This is probably an important reason for their Dallas-like lifestyle. But now, as the days lengthen, the breeding season begins. It starts with song duels at dawn. JR is still holding his territory by the beech tree, but so far he's failed to attract a female. Nearby, in the ancient Mount Garden, the air is full of song. Half a dozen male robins are singing defiance at each other from the safety of the yew bushes. Finally, the rival males are reduced to 2, each defending his end of the garden like players on a tennis court. On the hedge, red-blue right. Defending the sundial end with 2 white rings on his left leg, white left. At first, the resident male tries to scare his rival off with this weird display. As well as his territory, he has a mate to defend. The strange banana-like posture exposes the maximum area of red breast feathers to his rival. The battle now becomes violent. Robins, unlike most other birds, frequently fight physically in defense of their territories. Each bird tries to pin its opponent to the ground, striking at its head and particularly its eyes. Serious fights are an everyday event for a robin defending a territory, and at least 1 in 10 males die as a result of them. But the situation is even worse for the robin without a territory. Not only does he lose his chance to breed this year, with a life expectancy of only 14 months, this may well be his only chance. Meanwhile, the victor's mate, green-white right, waits for him to return and feed her. Shortly before the female robin lays her first egg, the male starts bringing her extra food to help her develop her eggs. It takes him about 1/5 of his daylight hours to provide his mate with all this food, up to 50 extra feeds a day, something like 1/3 of her energy requirements. But this labor isn't in vain. A well-fed female produces a larger clutch of eggs and, in due course, all being well, a larger number of offspring for them both. Early next morning, David is making his round of the robin territories. It seems that one of the Mount Garden males has fought one battle too many.
These head injuries are absolutely typical of a robin that's been killed by another one. Nearly all the head feathers have been removed and the skin's come off, exposing the bone of the skull. In this case, one of the eyes is missing.
The mutilated body of a robin killed in a fight is a sad sight, though not an unusual one. But the sight of this robin stops David in his tracks.
It's very unusual to see a sick robin, and this robin looked far sicker than any other robin I think I'd ever seen before. The bird was shivering and shaking, seemed to be having problems breathing, and its feathers were all ruffled up. It looked like it needed a good preening and a wash. Perhaps the saddest thing of all, the bird's eyes. Kept on shutting them, and they seemed to be all puffy and have a strange kind of goo oozing out from around the rims. I haven't got a clue what's caused this. I've certainly never seen anything like it before.
But not all is doom and disaster for the garden robins. Many of them have already started building their nests. A young female has chosen a site in the stables. It's her first attempt, and she hasn't got it quite right. High over Church Walk floats the song of a robin. This is JR territory. But has he managed to acquire a mate yet? David is pretty sure that he has. But the identity of the mate is quite a surprise. This is green-white right, the widowed female from the Mount Garden, whose dead mate David found only a few days ago. She's come right across from the other side of the gardens and paired up with JR. Deserted or widowed robins are often quick to pair up again, sometimes as little as half an hour after losing a mate. GWR is building her nest in an old lime tree next to JR's beach. Suddenly, JR stops singing. Down below, a rival male has appeared to challenge him. Red-white left has his territory near the small fountain. He lost his mate a little while ago, and it's probably the presence of GWR that has attracted him. Male robins take a considerable interest in their neighbours' females and will mate with them if they possibly can. Neither are the females reluctant to do so. 1 in 20 males is actually a bigamist, paired with 2 females who share his territory. It's a wise robin that knows its own father. But finally, after a powerful display, red-white left leaves the field to JR. Meanwhile, the gardens are busy with the bustle of birds feeding and caring for their young. There are over 100 nests of various species within the walls of the garden. The nuthatches have constructed a comfortable home, its entrance narrowed with a plaster of mud. The young missel thrushes are constantly clamouring for food. They'll be ready to leave the nest in the next day or two. The end of April brings a patch of surprisingly warm weather, more like the height of summer. David returns to the gardens after a short absence and starts to check the territories. Almost at once, he gets an uneasy feeling. He knows that there were 38 colour-ringed robins in the gardens, but where are they all? As the sun rises high on another scorching day, David completes his tour of the gardens. Hardly a robin to be seen. One obvious explanation might be that predators had been killing them. But there don't seem to be many cats in the gardens, and the kestrels aren't nesting in the village this year. What about sparrowhawks? They're often to be seen hunting round the gardens. Are they killing robins? David decides to follow one back to its plucking post. Undeniably, this sparrowhawk has been taking robins. But can it really be responsible for the loss of such a large number of them? And how could it catch them all so easily?
The reason the sparrowhawks were managing to kill so many robins was simply that most of the robins were affected by the strange disease I'd seen earlier in the month. And soon, I wasn't just finding sick birds, I was also finding dead birds. And gradually, day by day, familiar birds were vanishing from the garden. Even JR's wife was found dead, lying in the churchyard, just near her own nest. Even Red-Blue Wright fell sick. He spent most of his time sitting in the yew hedge, moping, not even bothering to sing. Later on, I visited JR's nest. And perhaps not surprisingly, with Green-White Wright dead, the eggs had been deserted and the nest wrecked, presumably by the local squirrels. But where was JR?
David climbs the church tower. He has also mapped the territories of robins in the village, on farmland nearby, and indeed in the whole valley. Perhaps he will still find robins there somewhere.
I searched the gardens, the village, and finally I went round the whole valley that contains the village, searching all the places where I knew that robins had lived before. And in all, I reckon that some 150 to 200 robins died in the space of a month. I've never ever seen anything like it, and I don't know anyone else who has. Virtually the whole robin population, the whole valley, wiped out in just 4 short weeks.
Time passes. Not a robin is seen in the gardens. Then, one June morning, a familiar sound is heard. Not just a robin singing, though that's marvellous enough, it's JR. He's back on his same old territory, but this time just the other side of the garden wall. And he has a mate, sitting tight on her nest in an old sycamore. She's BL, Black Left, a robin from the village. Her mate, too, had died of the mysterious disease. JR brings in green caterpillars. His mate takes some for herself, but most she'll pass on to the chicks. JR's next offering of green caterpillars is slightly over the top for chicks this size. It's noticeable that male robins are much less skillful than females at choosing suitably sized food for their young. It's now the height of summer. On the sunny side of the wall, a pair of spotted flycatchers have built their nest. The female is on eggs, her second clutch this year, and it's uncomfortably hot. Visitors to the gardens wander off in search of a meal. The flycatcher is luckier. Her food is brought to her as she sits. David continues his studies. Dead robins have been sent for post-mortem examination. The initial reaction is that they died of a viral disease of a type never seen before. Abdominal cysts are also mentioned, and sure enough, JR has one as well. It would appear that JR also caught the disease, but unlike most of the other robins, he survived. The chicks are doing well too. They show no sign of the disease. All 6 eggs hatched and are now 6 healthy, hungry nestlings. Tomorrow could be the day they leave the nest. At first light, the chicks start jostling and stretching their wings. The first chick prepares to launch into the unknown.
And so after all the disasters, JR had finally succeeded. By the end of the morning, all 6 of his chicks had safely left the nest, and at that point, they were the only chicks in the whole of the garden.
For the first few days, they can't really fly properly. The fledglings are parked in various spots around the father's territory where their parents bring them food. At 3 weeks old, the specular youngsters become independent. In only a few weeks more, they'll acquire the adult red breast and start carving out territories for themselves like their parents. At least, that's what normally happens. Autumn comes round again. Once more, the gardeners are tidying up for winter. But this year, will there be any robins in the garden to watch them at work? Yes, in fact, there are 41 robins in the garden this autumn, 3 more than at the same time last year. 3 are youngsters from JR's brood. But of these 41 robins, only 3 are survivors from last year. The remainder are mostly young birds coming in from outside. The disease itself is still under study. It has several remarkable features, amongst them its amazing virulence and the speed of its transmission. Virtually every individual was affected. An entire population of some 200 robins was wiped out, and yet closely related species were unaffected. Its detailed studies such as David's that reveal the complexity of the dangers that face our wild birds and their resilience in dealing with them.